Welcome back to College Football Addiction. Drake Toll from Locked On Big 12. Talking a little Iowa State and Utah. Is Iowa State, Drake, the forgotten team of the Big 12? They don't control their own destiny, but all they need is Colorado or Arizona State to maybe drop a game, and they're kind of right back in it. What are your thoughts on Iowa State overall?
You know, the first thing we have to consider with Iowa State is that at some point every season, your expectations reset. If you're looking at BYU, Iowa State, Arizona State, Colorado, all of those schools preseason, you say, hey, you go 8-4 this year. They're going to be elated. Those fan bases are so happy. What a bounce back year. But then at some point, you start winning enough, every expectation resets. And we were talking just 3 weeks ago about undefeated Iowa State against undefeated BYU in the Big 12 championship game. And then could we see Kansas State sneak in with a couple of losses as an at-large, or Colorado do the exact same thing? Now we're talking about a BYU team not playing at its highest level and an Iowa State team certainly not playing at its highest level. I think you are wholly disappointed if you're an Iowa State fan with those reset expectations of where they are. You could still very well finish this regular season at 10-2. You should win this week, and you very likely win against Kansas State at home. They're not playing their best football. But that 10-2, if you don't go to the Big 12 championship, you're thinking, wow, 4 weeks ago, we were ready to go to the college football playoff, and now we're going to the Texas Bowl, and that would be disastrous for a fan base that was so ready for glory.
Last week beating Cincinnati, is that a product of who they played, or is that have they figured things back out a little bit? Cincinnati, not too terrible in the beginning to middle part of this season. Just thoughts on that win last week?
Yeah, I think you look back at the Texas Tech, that's really what I've mentioned here is that dilapidation for Iowa State in the last month or so. That Texas Tech game, you lose by one, you think, okay, fluke game. Similar to a BYU in Kansas, you look at it as a one-off. If we win the rest of our games, we still control our destiny. We still go to the Big 12 championship, go to the college football playoff. It was that Kansas game that was the backbreaker. So beating Cincinnati in the fashion that you did is good, but Cincinnati's 5-5. They're 3-4 in conference play. If you've watched them play this year, you know they're pretty solid. You know they have a good running game. You know they have a serviceable quarterback at the very least, but they aren't at the level of Colorado right now. They're not at the level still of BYU or maybe even Kansas State. So that win is in your back pocket, but there's no committee that's looking at that win and saying, oh, wow, we can hang our hats somewhere on that. And I don't think if you're Iowa State, that win would go as far as beating a BYU or a Kansas State or a Colorado right now. And the Utah win, if they get it, won't either. You need momentum through these big moments and big games, and Cincinnati wasn't one of those. Do I think it's positive for Iowa State? Obviously, they doubled them up, but it's Cincinnati, and that doesn't give you a ton of luster, I should say.
Yeah. If they can get this win against Utah and then they can beat Kansas State next week, some things fall their way, they get back into the Big 12 mix, they find their way to Arlington. It is, obviously that's the dream, right? At this point, you're on the outside, but you're right there, right? If a little bit more chaos happens this year, you're kind of right there. Iowa State, again, it's not going to be, if they make it to Arlington, it'll be fine. But, just thoughts on Matt Campbell there. And I know he's not like, there's no hot seat talk or anything like that, but just thoughts on, where he is with that program, big picture. Are you looking to up your game in sports betting? Meet OddsJam, your ultimate ally in the world of data-driven wagering. With over 260 sportsbook under its belt, OddsJam is the go-to platform for savvy bettors. Here's how it works. OddsJam's arbitrage tool scans the market in real time, spotting differences in betting lines across various sportsbooks. This means you can lock in risk-free profits by betting on both sides of the market. But that's not all. OddsJam also provides positive EV calculators to optimize your bets and a handy bet tracker to monitor your profits. By using OddsJam, you're not just betting smarter, you're betting responsibly for long-term profitability. And here's the kicker. They offer a 7-day free trial. Ready to give it a shot? Use code CFA, that's College Football Addiction, for a 35% discount on your first payment, either monthly or yearly. Secure your bets with confidence and make informed decisions with OddsJam.
Yeah, I think you're going to start saying, hey, Matt Campbell is a statue coach. He's the guy that brought Iowa State from a bottom dweller. They were right there with Kansas. They were right there with Colorado in the grand scheme of college football teams that just couldn't seem to win a game. Matt Campbell comes into Ames, Iowa, and brings a winning culture. You start to ask the question, though, could he ever get this school over the hump? And it reminds me vaguely, so very vaguely, of what you saw with Georgia and Mark Richt. Okay, this is a guy who brought the Dogs to prominence, but he can't win the big game. He can't get us where we want. And maybe it's that next coach. It's your Kirby Smart that comes in and takes that winning culture and turns it into championship culture. Iowa State doesn't have a championship culture. Now, they never have, and certainly this is as close as they've been under Campbell, but at what point do you hit the break and say, all right, we keep going 8-4 or 9-3 or 6-6? When do we get to win 10 games? If they go to the Big 12 championship, that obviously changes. And TJ, to shoot you straight, these next 2 games, I think they do win both of them. The only problem is your destiny's not in your own hands. You're counting on other teams to do something in your favor.
Yeah. Utah, I asked you this last week against Utah, or about Utah, coming off the BYU loss, emotional, heartbreaking loss. And then, you get up one more time. And I thought they played with pretty good effort. I just, didn't have enough guys there to beat Colorado last week. But does Utah have anything left in the tank? I mean, I asked you the same question last week and we were kind of questioning it, but thoughts on them coming forward this week?
No, I don't think so. And TJ, the answer that I went with last week was talking about Mark Harlan going into the locker room post BYU and seeing players that were so dilapidated and were just sad enough that he went to the podium and did what he did. Then last week, the way in which they were blown out by Colorado, you saw some fight. And the second you saw fight, you saw the lack of quarterback play come back to bite them. And you're looking at, hey, can we make it a 1-score game? Could Utah find a way? Can Isaac Wilson lead them back? And he throws a perfect pass into the chest of a Colorado defender. And you think, oh, well, there goes any shot of Utah winning this. And just how porous they looked in that fourth quarter shows me that Utah's done. They've packed it in. They don't have a quarterback that can play at the Division I level. Isaac Wilson is not ready. They're not ready to use their backup, the Italian Stallion. And for that, I just don't think Utah comes within 10 this week against Iowa State. And that's a tough thing to say for a legendary head coach there, a statue guy in Kyle Whittingham.
Yeah. We may preview this next week. We'll see with the holiday and everything else like that. Early, do you kind of like where Iowa State's at more than Kansas State next week? Or is it just you dislike where Kansas State is more than you dislike where Iowa State is? Or thoughts, early thoughts on that one?
Well, Iowa State's last game, you already mentioned, it's that Cincinnati win. Kansas State, their last 2, a loss to Arizona State by 10, and that loss at Houston. Houston has been wily, sure, but wily can't be the kind of team that knocks off a Big 12 title contender. We don't get points for losing to a gutsy squad from down there in humidity country. And so Kansas State, and ESPN would tell you that Iowa State has a 58% chance to win that game as of today. That's what's probably going to happen. After that Cincinnati win, you have more momentum than a Kansas State team coming off of 2 losses. We could see the Wildcats in a spot here against Iowa State where you look around and you're saying, oh, shoot, they lost a home game to Cincinnati. They're going to lose at Iowa State. Could they finish 7-5? That's a real possibility because Cincinnati, they're wily too, and you lost to Houston. So until you start winning again, I can't trust Kansas State. Again, I think Iowa State finishes 10-2 in the regular season.
Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work, bud?
At LO Big 12 on Twitter or at Drake Seattle, and wherever you find your podcast, that's Locked On Big 12.